Welcome, everyone, to Post Game Podcast. I'm your host, June. And before I get into this segment, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to Bleachers the Speakers on YouTube and also follow us on all the podcast aggregators. That's anywhere you can listen to a podcast. You can find us. Just type in Post Game Podcast, FFSN in your search. Make sure that notification bell's on. Make sure you're following us as well. But once you do that, whenever we drop content, you will get an alert. Download those episodes. We'd like to see who's watching so we can cater to our audience and expand our audience. So it helps us out if you download those episodes. Once again, we have our featured player of the week, old school edition. I'm an old head. People around my way call me old school or whatever, man. But I wasn't this far back as this player I'm about to talk about. When it comes to old school players, Detroit Pistons, they don't have a plethora of history as far as old school players that made a crazy mark. But this guy right here is a Hall of Famer, and I dove back a little bit further than I usually go back. But I'm talking about Hall of Famer point guard Dave Bing. Dave Bing played from 1966 to 1975 here for the Pistons. I know. And trust me, I am not that old. Matter of fact, it's funny. I seen Dave Bing at a restaurant this summer, and he looks good. He's, of course, he's older, but he was by himself. He was driving. He was dressed, from head to toe, fresh as I don't know what, man. And he still looks good. He played 675 games with the Pistons. He averaged 22.6 points a game. He averaged 6.2 assists per game, 4.2 rebounds, and he had a field goal percentage of 44.4% and a free throw percentage of 77.3. He was the NBA Rookie of the Year in 1967, where he averaged 20 points a game and 4 assists. That was his very first season. He was the NBA scoring champion in 1968. He led the league with 27.1 points per game, and that was in his second season. He's a 6-time NBA All-Star, and those were seasons in 1968, 1969, 1971, 1973, 74, and 75 while with Detroit. He was an all NBA first team in 1968 and 1971, and he was all NBA second team in 1974. He is the franchise's second all-time leading scorer at the time of his departure. I think that record has been passed, but when he left, he was the second all-time leading scorer. He was known for his smooth scoring ability, leadership, and playmaking. He carried the Pistons through the 1960s and early 70s, though the team struggled to find playoff success. His number 21 jersey has been retired. It's up in the rafters. After leaving Detroit, he played with the Bullets, Boston Celtics, before retiring in 1978. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1990. This guy was an amazing player for the Detroit Pistons, And like I said, if you can be blessed enough to make that Hall of Fame for the NBA, I know it's a lot easier than the Baseball Hall of Fame, but it's still a feat. They just don't let anybody in the NBA Hall of Fame. This guy was well deserved, and he's a Detroit person. Like I said, he has to still live in the area unless he was visiting, because I've seen him a couple of times last summer, and one time was in a restaurant. So give it up for Dave Bing. Subscribe to Bleachers to Speakers on YouTube. We got a lot more on there. We got featured player profiles. We have our post-game podcast shows where we talk about Detroit Pistons basketball. We have Bleachers to Speakers where we talk about Detroit Lions football. And we also have Corner to Copa, where we talk about Detroit Tigers baseball, and there's a lot of baseball on the way. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss the material, the content. So subscribe to Bleachers to Speakers on YouTube and keep listening to the podcast wherever you can hear an audio podcast. Just type in Post Game Podcast FFSN. You'll see that piston colored logo. Check us out.